You're listening to Campus Killings, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Below the Surface, and Killer Communications. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hi, Meghan, and welcome back, listeners. Today's case was suggested by Ashanti C. Thank you so much for your suggestion. We've really been enjoying going through all of the listener cases this season. And I don't know about you, but I not only learned a lot about cases I'd never heard of, but also universities that I didn't know about. So a big shout out to everyone who has taken the time to write us about their alma maters and the campus stories you wanted deep dives on this season. They have given us a lot to discuss.
Amy, I think we actually have a lot that we're going to be doing some listener suggestions next season as well.
Well, I was just going to say, don't worry if you haven't heard your case yet or even haven't had the chance to send it, because even though we only have a few episodes left in season 4, we are still covering listener suggestions throughout next season, so stay tuned. Now, on to Ashanti's case. And even though the university itself wasn't really involved in this crime, as it happened off campus, I was still drawn to this case because social media played a pretty central role in how the media interpreted the potential motives and the investigation. So I look forward to discussing that aspect a bit later. Before we get into the meat of this case, let's take a look at the school where it all happened, Radford University. Founded in 1910, the school was originally named the State Normal and Industrial School for Women at Radford. But the name was quickly shortened to the State Teachers College at Radford in 1924. As we've seen in many of the typical institutions that we've covered, this school's primary function was to train and supply teachers to the Appalachian region where the city of Radford was located. And it would remain a women's-only institution until 1972. Between the 1970s and the present, the school grew exponentially, going from a teacher's college to an accredited university offering a full liberal arts education. And despite it being a public institution, class sizes are fairly small, at around only 20 students, which makes the faculty-to-student ratio close to that of a private university. The campus is also quite beautiful, with Georgian-style academic and dorm buildings, tree-lined pedestrian walkways, and scenic views of Virginia's Blue Ridge and Allegheny Mountains. And one of their largest assets is a public planetarium, which features a 55-seat theater offering free shows to the public that are put on by students and faculty from the physics department. How cool is that? Let's go.
I was
Let's
just
take a
going to
little road
say,
trip.
let's sign me up, actually.
They get around 6,000 visitors annually to these shows, and if any of our listeners live near Radford, it's definitely a fun thing to check out while visiting the area. Radford also recently won an award as a College of Distinction, and as of 2025, they were rated the best ROTC program in the country by the Department of Defense. With so much to offer, it's not surprising that a Virginia native named Alexa Cannon decided to make Radford her university of choice. While it's not clear exactly what attracted Alexa to Radford, we do know that she grew up in the city of Roanoke, which was only a 45-minute drive from the campus. As the youngest child in her family, with 2 older sisters, Alexa was described by family and friends as a sweet, gentle young woman with an uplifting personality. Despite severe struggles with epilepsy throughout her middle school and high school years, Alexa made the best of her situation by committing herself to a life of service and having a positive attitude. She was excellent at organizing events, and she spent much of her time assisting her church in creating service trips where she and her fellow congregants provided help to local community members who were experiencing homelessness, food scarcity, and financial insecurity. She also went on 2 mission trips to the Dominican Republic where she helped lead a vacation Bible school for local children and assisted in the construction of a hospital in San Juan. She also used these trips to practice her Spanish as her goal was to become bilingual. With such close ties to her community, I would speculate that picking a college within a drivable distance of her hometown would have probably made Radford an appealing choice, and also given that it was a great institution. Also, as a public institution offering in-state tuition, it would have been very affordable as well.
Amy, before you researched this case, had you ever heard of Radford, the college?
No, have you?
No, I haven't. That's why. And hearing that it was a female-only school until the 1970s, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, I was just curious.
And it reminds me, reading about it reminds me a bit of FDU, because not many people have heard of FDU. Actually, besides somewhat recently when the basketball team was in some division finals,
Right.
like a national finals. But other than that, people that aren't from, the tri-state area very rarely hear of where we teach.
Yeah.
Whatever reason had attracted Alexa to Radford, she began her studies there in the fall of 2016 with a major in psychology. Although I did see a few references to criminal justice as well. So maybe she did a minor or even a double major, or maybe she just changed her minor at some point.
Mm-hmm.
While she got off to a bumpy start and struggled with her academics due to her epilepsy, her professor said that she turned things around by her sophomore year and became an excellent student. She also reportedly got just as involved in her college as she had in her hometown, and she participated in several on-campus organizations. One of these clubs was the Latino Student Alliance, where Alexa's best friend Louisa Cutting was president. According to posts on Alexa's social media, she met Louisa online at some point in her freshman year. Unfortunately, I couldn't find out exactly what that meant, whether it was through Messenger or maybe they were following each other on Instagram. Neither one of their social media pages are still available, so how and why is still a bit of a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
But if any of our listeners knew Alexa or went to Radford, please feel free to send us a message and let us know anything that you might know about how this relationship started.
Did the listener who suggested the case know either of them?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that following the online meeting, Alexa and Louisa became best friends. And it's not surprising, as Louisa was a lot like Alexa. While originally from Dallas, Texas, Louisa and her family had moved to Culpeper, Virginia when Louisa started high school. And probably like Alexa, Radford was an easy choice due to the affordable in-state tuition and proximity. Louisa was also a go-getter student and bilingual in Spanish and English. And I'm sure this was a huge interest to Alexa, as she had a built-in teacher in Louisa that she could practice her Spanish with. By all accounts, the two just meshed, and during their sophomore year, they ended up dorming across the street from each other. Their friends described them as rarely being seen without the other, and in the summer between sophomore and junior year, they took a girls' trip to Cancun. Their Instagrams were filled with photos of the two of them on Mexican beaches together, snaps in the hotel with silly filters, and gushing posts on both Facebook and Instagram about how close they had grown. When they came back from Cancun, they decided they were going to get an off-campus apartment together for their junior year.
Now, why do I have a feeling that's where things are going to go wrong?
Yeah, that is where things take a turn.
Okay.
But Alexa was beyond excited for this opportunity, and she posted about her feelings to Instagram in March of 2018. Along with a photo of her and Louisa, Alexa wrote, quote, "I met this girl 2 years ago online, and somehow we ended up living across from each other for a year. This summer, she was the equivalent to my mom in Cancun, and unimaginably, she still puts up with me, and now we're living together next year. Love you more, Lou, and everyone pray that we don't kill each other this year." Exclamation point. She closed the message with a heart emoji, and Louisa responded with, "Love you more, babe." The girls moved into a first-floor apartment on Clement Street in downtown Radford, and life seemed pretty average in the following months.
Mm-hmm.
They continued to be inseparable around campus, with one of their neighbors claiming that he never saw one of them without the other one. They also kept up their social media love for each other and enjoyed going out for university nightlife and other social activities.
Do they have other friends, other boyfriends, girlfriends, romantic interests? I'm hearing...
Not that I'm aware of. They did have other friends, but I'm not sure about their romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm not sure that they were involved romantically. But who knows? It's possible.
Oh, okay.
But while I couldn't find any evidence that Alexa indulged in alcohol or other substances at off-campus parties, several sources pointing to Louisa being a heavy drinker along with using marijuana and cocaine. Now, how often she did these drugs, that's unclear because there was no documentation defining whether she was a regular user or only dabbled recreationally at parties.
Mm-hmm.
But reports suggest that around the time she began experimenting with cocaine, there was a sudden change in the content of her social media posts. Her tweets in particular would become cryptic and strange.
Do you have examples?
Yes. In one post, she asked her followers, quote, "Who else had weird visions in their dreams last night? Something's trying to get through. Dreams getting wilder and wilder." Then there was another one from the winter of 2018 that stated, "My roommate forgot to pay the gas bill, and they won't come and turn it on until Monday. Now there's a snowstorm on the way. Thank God I'll be drunk all day."
Oh, boy.
These appear to be quite different from the gushing love you posts going back and forth between the two friends from earlier in the year.
Right.
But on the opposite side, there were no reference changes to Alexa's social media posting at the time, and their friends didn't report noticing any issues between the two. And they still seemed inseparable, and it appeared to all around them that their friendship was going strong. These are the kind of things we see in a lot of cases where looking at the posts without the context of what happens later, they don't seem alarming. A lot of young people these days post all these things that are going on in their life, like, forgot to pay the bill, getting drunk, snowstorm. It doesn't seem, maybe the one about the dreams sticks out a little, but none of these seem alarming.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I think what people post is also different than, what I would have posted. And I only had access to Facebook, and I guess I wasn't a big poster anyway. So yeah, I'm always surprised at how much people share.
Mm-hmm. Also, just to be fair though, when we were in college and young adults, I don't think it was as popular social. It's popular, but I think it's different today than it even was.
Oh, no, it
then.
wasn't as popular.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Huh.
Things would take a turn on both of the girls' social media by January of 2019. On January 10th, Louisa tweeted the sentence, quote, "I know death is coming, but I still can't wrap my head around it." This was followed by more vague tweets about strange dreams. Then,
That's alarming. Sorry, that's
yes.
very alarming. Okay.
That's alarming, and I don't know how many followers she had. I don't know if anyone tried to approach her about this. But this was the first time we saw Alexa posting. Around 10 days later, on January 20th, Alexa wrote the following post on Facebook. Quote, "I stopped venting and started praying because I don't need sympathy. I need strength." Only 4 days later, Alexa would be dead and Louisa would answer their front door covered in blood.
Whoa, what happened?
Yeah, that escalated quick, it seems.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
At 7:30 a.m. on the morning of January 24th, 2019, 911 received 2 calls from the Clement Street apartment complex. In the first, the dispatcher could only hear women screaming, and one of them mentioned the word knife. But only minutes later, a second call came in from a neighbor claiming that they could hear 2 women who lived next door having a screaming match through their shared wall. Police arrived shortly after at 7:45, expecting a domestic dispute, but were shocked when a young woman opened the door covered in blood. Before they could ask her anything, she turned around, put her hands behind her back, saying, "Arrest me, I killed her."
Oh, my goodness.
She told them her name was Louisa Cutting and that she had just murdered her roommate, Alexa Cannon. As police entered the apartment, they found blood spray everywhere. They also found Alexa lying on the living room floor, bleeding from multiple stab wounds with a serrated kitchen knife sticking out of her mouth.
Oh, my God.
Cell phone was still in her hand, and later records would show that she was the one who made the initial 911 phone call that morning. Though EMS tried to resuscitate Alexa, she was pronounced dead at the scene, and Louisa was immediately arrested for murder. She was transported to police headquarters for questioning while Alexa's body was taken in for an autopsy.
Did she speak with the police?
She did. And so she did have a police interview, and I'll get to that in a moment. But first, I want to tell you what the medical examiner found. The medical examiner ruled that Alexa had been stabbed somewhere between 30 and 40 times, with most of the wounds to her torso.
Oh.
She had died of excessive blood loss and fatal wounds to several organs. This goes without saying, but this had been a brutal and excruciating way to die.
Yeah.
And as we know from many of the other cases that we've covered, stabbings of this nature reveal a specific and personal kind of violence. But what would have caused Louisa to take what looked like personal vengeance out on her best friend? Unfortunately for investigators, the answer would not be straightforward. So you had asked about whether or not she would talk to police.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes and no, because in her police interview, Louisa acted erratically, rambling nonsensically about an impending apocalypse in between reciting the Hail Mary prayer in Spanish. She also kept trying to stick her entire hand in her mouth and repeatedly admitted to killing Alexa.
Why do I see the potential for an insanity plea coming?
Well, it sounds like she is having a mental health episode for sure.
Yes.
When investigators were able to get her to calm down and focus on what had happened, she told them that she didn't remember the last time she had slept, and that she had been doing cocaine with the devil, along with consuming mushrooms, Adderall, marijuana, Xanax, and alcohol in the hours leading up to the murder.
Whoa.
And I mean, I would assume that not only was she in shock at this point, but she was still probably heavily under the influence of these substances during her interview.
This sounds like substance-induced psychosis to me.
I would agree. And there's been a few other cases that we covered that, show someone who doesn't have other signs necessarily, but then when they're abusing substances and then an episode like this happens.
Yeah.
It also makes me think that maybe they shouldn't have been interrogating her until she was coming down or detoxing.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I mean, I don't know how reliable that information's going to be, and later on what her lawyer is going to say, was she capable of even understanding her Miranda rights,
Mm-hmm. I also think in a case like this, there's so much overwhelming evidence that they're not really hinging on this confession anyway. So maybe it wasn't as big of an issue as it might be in other cases.
Sure.
Either way, she claimed that she had no memory of killing Alexa or what had even happened to cause the argument. But obtaining this information took several hours to gather, as Louisa swung from calm and articulate one minute to incoherently rambling about the loss of her best friend the next moment. And at the end of multiple hours of questioning, investigators still had no idea why Louisa had killed Alexa in such a brutal way.
Right.
Instead, they pursued warrants for both women's social media accounts and for Alexa's phone. They also began to interview witnesses for any potential breakdown in the girls' relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I could find, they never found Louisa's phone. I'm sure they were obviously able to gather other digital information.
Okay.
So most of the digital information gleaned from these warrants had not been made public. But several sources agreed that police found evidence of Alexa contacting friends about some issues that she had been having with Louisa in the week before the murder. I don't know exactly what she said, but since the forensics team removed a plethora of pills, grinders, and smoking devices out of Louisa's room, along with a brown chalky substance from the kitchen counter, we can hypothesize that Alexa was probably struggling with what to do about Louisa's escalating drug use.
Right.
And recall, Louisa's tweets had taken a strange turn in the days right before the murder, with her references to expecting death and having disturbing dreams in which something was trying to get through. And while some online sleuths had pointed out that these tweets are premeditation, law enforcement saw them more so as indicative of a behavioral pattern in a person who was delving deeper into substance abuse. And I would agree with that.
Yeah.
But while this all added up to a few disturbing details, it still didn't provide a clear motive. Regardless, Luisa's confession and the physical evidence from both the digital warrants and from the scene were enough to charge her with second-degree murder. She was sent to jail to await her preliminary hearing, but her behavior was still so erratic and bizarre after being processed at the jail that the warden applied for an emergency custody order and Luisa was removed to a mental health facility.
That's the right call.
I was going to say that's clearly the right call. And according to documentation, she continued her, quote, bizarre behavior at the facility and was still trying to shove her entire hand in her mouth. She spent over a week at the mental health facility before being released back to the county jail, where her defense team suggested that she waive her right to a preliminary hearing. This is kind of more of a side note. Did you ever hear people could waive their right to a preliminary hearing?
Yeah, they can waive their right to a preliminary hearing when the evidence is overwhelming and it seems like there's no point to it because it's clearly going to go, the case is going to move forward.
Yeah, and, like I mentioned before, like you said, the evidence was overwhelming and the physical evidence from the scene clearly showed that no one had been in that apartment except the two women. Plus, Luisa had already confessed in her interview. She was displaying intense remorse and grief at her actions in both her recorded interviews with investigators and with her defense team.
Right.
Between her confession and continual displays of remorse, her team didn't feel it was appropriate to pursue defenses in irresistible impulse, insanity, or voluntary intoxication.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which makes sense to me because although I still think that if it was, temporary insanity or substance-induced psychosis, someone would still show remorse and regret, I believe.
Well, yeah, but it sounds like she almost maybe wants to take accountability for her actions, and maybe that, that was her call,
Yeah. And her team advised her not to go to trial, and the victim's family agreed with this. They didn't want to relive their daughter's murder, and they didn't want to have to sit in a room with their daughter's once best friend knowing that she had stabbed Alexa to death.
I don't blame them.
Instead, the prosecution worked with Alexa's family and the defense to come up with a plea deal agreement. The terms were a 40-year sentence, half of which would be suspended after 20 years served. Following her release in 2039, at the age of 41, Luisa would spend another 10 years on probation. The agreement also included a no-contact clause between Luisa and any of Alexa's family members, as well as requiring her to receive mental health treatments while incarcerated and to provide $4,000 in restitution funds to the Virginia Victims Fund.
I mean, I understand. I think that sounds like probably the best outcome for everyone. Are you going to talk about what led to this, or if she ever discusses her motive? Was there a rift? I mean, I think I understand that I feel that she was in substance-induced psychosis, but does she ever discuss it?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think that she knows. It sounds like, remember, she said she really had no idea why she did it or even what led to the argument. Oh. And it's possible that it wasn't even anything that led to the argument. It could have been a miscommunication, a look taken the wrong way.
Okay.
Just to go back to the sentence, I'm not sure what the point is of the 40 years to just suspend half her sentence, because the statute for second-degree murder in Virginia is 20 to 40 years. So why not just give her 20 years?
Because they're suspending the sentence, but if she does something wrong, then that sentence goes into play.
This is almost serving as more of a deterrent for her to act good in prison.
Well, no. They'll release her after 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? So then she gets out and she's got 20 years suspended now. But if she gets in trouble, if she reoffends or does something, then she will have to serve the rest of that 20 years.
Gotcha. Whereas if they gave her 20 years, how would that be different than giving her 20 years? Because
after 20 years, she'd be done. And that's it. So this is saying, no, if you reoffend, if you contact the victim's family, if you do something criminal to violate the terms, you can possibly have to serve another 20 years.
Gotcha. Okay. So that is I think that gives her incentive to follow the rules and do good.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. Okay. Louisa agreed to these terms and she pled guilty to second-degree murder. The prosecutor later told the press that the Cannon family was happy with the outcome and that by agreeing to a plea, they secured a murder conviction and avoided Louisa being able to make any potential appeals.
Yeah.
Louisa also showed extreme and genuine remorse during victim impact statements, and when it was her turn to speak, she told Alexa's family, quote, "There are no words for this tragedy, and my heart is filled with sorrow and grief. My heart goes out to the Cannon family. I take full responsibility for this."
I mean, I believe her based on what you said.
And her lawyer claimed that her remorse was real, as there was not a day he worked with her that she wasn't emotional and claiming responsibility for what she had done.
Yeah.
We'll return after a brief word from our sponsors.
Whatever the legal outcome was, the fact that one of Radford's students had murdered another shook the campus, especially since the killing had been between two well-known best friends. One of the girl's neighbors, who was also a Radford junior, told the press that he was shocked since Alexa and Louisa were literally always seen together. He couldn't fathom what had possibly caused such a rift between them that would lead to murder. And this sentiment was rampant across the campus as the Radford community came together for a vigil at the rec center in Alexa's memory on January 30th, 2019. Attendees were encouraged to wear blue since it was Alexa's favorite color and to bring any photos that they had of her to share with the family. Professors spoke about Alexa's enthusiastic energy in class, and fellow students remembered her service to the many clubs and organizations that she participated in. Following the vigil, hundreds of students and faculty were given blue glow sticks meant to represent the light that Alexa brought to Radford, and they would carry these as they performed a walk of remembrance around the campus in Alexa's honor. Following the campus memorial, the Cannon family hosted a celebration of life for Alexa at their church. As hundreds of mourners lit candles and shared their favorite memories, Alexa's parents urged parishioners to pray not just for them and their loss, but for Louisa and the Cutting family as they too were losing their daughter and they needed community support.
That is very generous.
Yes. Alexa's father, Sam, closed the memorial with the following statement, quote, "No one here can change a tragic loss. That's beyond us and it's behind us. Just remember her energy. Her soul exists. Don't let this moment fade. Remember to use your wings. Let the universe know you are here. Let Alexa know you are there every day." In 2020, Second Presbyterian began renovations on one of their existing structures to create the Alexa House Mission Center to memorialize Alexa's commitment to service projects and helping her community.
Wow.
The center was dedicated and opened in 2024 and currently provides temporary housing to families in the community who are facing homelessness.
That's a beautiful tribute to her work.
Yep. The interior of the building is decorated with blue accents in Alexa's honor and many designs and photography elements that she favored in her own life. I didn't find any memorials or scholarships to Alexa at Radford University, and as her murder happened off campus, there was no documentation that Radford made any policy changes to their safety protocols. This is also the kind of case where I don't think this was preventable. Maybe a few of the comments she said red flags, but I don't think a lot of the cases that we cover, it's because there was like a crack in a policy or in a procedure. That's not what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know that it wasn't preventable in some way, but I don't know that this is the university prevention.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No.
In the aftermath, swirling comments online began to ponder if Alexa's murder might have been far more predictable than anyone originally thought. And everyone would go back to that one specific Instagram post, the one that Alexa made in March after the girls had returned from Cancun. Now, if you recall, her last sentence was, "Pray that we don't kill each other," and that became a laser focus for web sleuths and media outlets.
Well, I wouldn't say that's the post that alarmed me, but when I said that it was preventable, it was those other posts that were increasingly concerning.
And I think that was probably just said in jest. How many times have we both said, like, "Oh, we're going to kill each other if we don't get out of this room," or, people make these comments and you don't mean anything by it.
Yeah.
But online forums were full of threads suggesting that it was this post and many of the other social media messages that were indicative of Louisa being obsessed with Alexa and maybe even stalking her. They point out that this can all be read as Louisa infiltrating Alexa's life as they met online, and then Louisa seemed to be living nearby before, quote, momming Alexa on their vacation, and then them moving in together after their time in Cancun. I don't know that I think this is a reach, but many view Alexa's posts about Louisa as putting up with her as less a friendship and more that Louisa was trying to run Alexa's life.
Without being on the inside of this is just speculation.
Yeah. I don't think you'll be surprised that the media also took the, quote, pray we don't kill each other statement and ran with it, with several news outlets using the phrase as their headline or hyper-focusing on it throughout their articles as a testament to the problems already brewing between the roommates.
Well, it's a salacious headline. Yeah, it sells.
Without the girls' social media posts to compare and contrast, I don't know how relevant it can be from a criminological or investigative perspective to isolate one or two posts.
Right.
And perhaps the bigger question is, should we be interpreting social media posts as a way to gauge motives or premeditation in situations like this?
I think that's situational. Sometimes you could decipher from people's language, communication. There are indicators of motive. And what I think they're focusing on they're focusing on the wrong text to me. They're not focusing on the ones that show that she's increasingly becoming paranoid, the increasing changes or shifts in her behavior. That's not even what they're focusing on. They're focusing on like the one that's going to sell a headline.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And in my experience, law enforcement certainly uses social media as an investigative tool, but it doesn't seem that they typically look to interpret the meaning of what's posted. They're looking more for hard data that corroborates evidence or maybe changes in behavioral patterns.
Sure.
An example of this would be how they viewed Louisa's posts. Around the same time witnesses claimed she began using heavy substances, her social media posts became very different than what she had posted in previous months. And again, this showed a clear shift in her behavior that really directly coincided with her increased drug use.
Right, and that should be the focus instead of the other headlines.
Yeah, because assigning meaning or intent in what is posted is incredibly subjective, and it would require an immense amount of context for an accurate interpretation. Now, Alexa and Louisa's accounts, as I said, are no longer publicly available, so we can't see for ourselves, but we know that investigators had warrants for all of their correspondence on both of their phones and social media accounts, which means that law enforcement had access to all of their conversations and posts. So this would have given investigators a full picture of the girls' relationship and also allowed them to notate changes in behavior patterns and how they related to each other.
Right.
And while still subjective, this would have made it much easier to discern any potential hidden motives or premeditation. But again, nothing's ever been publicly released that there's any reason to think that this was premeditated or the girls had any propensity to kill the other, or even that their relationship had taken such a bad turn.
It sounds like Louisa took responsibility for her actions, and it doesn't sound like she was trying to escape anything, and it certainly doesn't sound premeditated to me.
Yeah. And there was never anything released that would suggest any evidence pointing to stalking, obsession, manipulation.
Right.
So I think as we see, web sleuths are trying to make this maybe into something more than it actually was.
Yeah.
In the end, after Louisa's treatment at the mental health facility, investigators ruled that what most likely occurred was that Louisa suffered a psychotic break brought on by the mixture of substances that she had ingested the night before the murder.
Right.
Along with several days of no sleep from using cocaine.
That makes sense.
So also, not sleeping can also induce behavioral changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What we do know for certain is that Alexa's life ended on that fateful January morning in 2019, and that her loss deeply affected both the Radford campus community and her hometown of Roanoke. Her former best friend is serving her time in the Virginia Department of Corrections, and we hope that the remorse and grief that Louisa displayed throughout her legal proceedings continues into her incarceration, and that she will continue to take the necessary steps to rehabilitate herself over the next 20 years. And as a PSA, if any of our listeners know someone suffering from substance abuse, help is available. A free 24/7 tip line is available at 1-884 888-289-0879, or you can go to drughelpline.org. All right, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you will join us on the next episode of Campus Killings. Before we go today, if you'd like to support Campus Killings, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts.
Your subscription will get you VIP access to all the shows on the network that not only includes hundreds of episodes of ad-free listening, but also bonus content and early access to episodes.
For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting this show in the process.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and search for either Campus Killings or AbJack, and you can start your subscription with a free trial.
Your support is greatly appreciated.
Campus Killings is hosted by Dr. Meghan Sachs and Dr. Amy Shlosberg, with research and writing by Abagail Belcastro. It's produced by Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to follow Campus Killings on social media. You can find Campus Killings on Twitter with the handle @CampusKillings, or on Facebook at facebook.com/CampusKillings. You can also visit the show's homepage at campuskillings.com. Be sure to tune in every other Saturday for new episodes of Campus Killings.